morning, Brittany. How are you doing?
Back home.
Back home, right here on the couch
well.
with us here on Mornin Barbados. And we're going to talk about free movement also with Nancy Solomon. And let me give their titles as well. Brittany being the Regional Labor Policy Advisor and Trustee with HRMAB. And Nancy, she is HR Manager with HRMAB and focusing on labor management. And you're also the HR Chair. So welcome. And we're talking about free movement. Everyone knows by now what would have happened. There is a new movement in effect of sorts, and now we can move labor freely between a number of countries. Not all just yet. Only certain member countries have signed on so far, and we're looking for more to happen as far as that is concerned. So we have Belize in the mix,
Yes.
St. Vincent and the Grenadines, yes. Barbados,
Yes.
and
Dominica.
So there is free move. Well, let me give the experts the opportunity to really speak about how this works. How does this work, Brittany, now that labor can move freely between these four countries?
So, it's working within the pre-existing dispensation of the CARICOM free movement of labor and the agreement that was established years ago under the Treaty of Chaguaramas. What we've done is to remove the impediments that existed, and I wouldn't even call them impediments, but some hurdles that existed with respect to verification or the getting a CARICOM skill certificate and having your qualifications and so on verified through your local accreditation council. There are certain barriers being removed at the immigration stops. For example, persons are receiving their stamp, immediately without having to engage with the BAC or our accreditation council here and then have that later on. And of course, there are other benefits. We've heard it and we've seen it. Persons are going to have access to Social Security, subject to them contributing, of course. And persons are going to have access to free medical care in the same way that we do. So there are wider benefits to this dispensation that Dominica, St. Vincent, Belize, and Barbados have signed on to. Yeah. From an employment perspective, it's smooth sailing. It makes the process pretty much like a process for any Barbadian, in so much as, of course, those persons have to get their NIS number and their TAMIS number. They don't have to wait on a CARICOM skill certificate to start to engage.
Still early days yet. It started October 1st. What are you hearing, Nancy, so far? Any stories to tell just yet about how this free movement of labor is working?
It's too early right now, Shane, to say of stories, but as someone who has benefited from the CARICOM skills certificate, Trinidadian, moving here 15 years ago to Barbados, yes.
You're one of us.
I am, I'm home. But that process, I can speak to it personally to know that, the time you had to wait to get your CARICOM skills certificate, that's 6 months. You only got a stamp for 6 months initially. So knowing that that has all been lifted, as Brittany indicated, definitely is going to open up opportunities for persons. No longer you have to necessarily fall into specific categories because the CARICOM skills certificate specified specific categories of workers. You can bring families over easy. And I think those are the stories that we're looking forward to hear from, because as we know, Barbados is an aging population. And those are some of the benefits that we're going to get as an economy immediately if we're able to bring in more families and persons coming here to work.
How is this a benefit which some of the other countries which are not signatory to this type of movement just yet? Tell me what they are missing out and why should they sign on?
Well, for me, I would say that they are missing out on the same openness, the opportunity, because you're still cutting off. If I moved here as a single person, it's one thing because I had the requisite skills. But if my husband did not have that, then you're breaking up a family. So you're removing the opportunity to have an entire unit come and have that benefit. You're also removing the opportunity to have what was envisioned really and truly in the Treaty of Chaguaramas. Right. The intention was never to have this level of restriction. We need to see the region as one entity. and not as these separate states. So they're missing out on us finally realizing the dream of Eric Williams and persons like those founding fathers. So I would say the sooner that more countries, and when they realize the benefits and release the fears, because there are some fears that persons have with such a opportunity as this lifting. We have persons who've been concerned about, the criminals coming in and that element. But crime is everywhere, and you can't really stop a criminal from coming in. And this lifting did not change that.
Right.
So I think once countries are able to release that fear and embrace the opportunities that will come from what is really supposed to have been with the Treaty of Chaguaramas, then there'll be a full benefit for the region as a whole and only strengthen us.
Do CARICOM nationals need to show evidence of having a job before making that transition between countries?
No. And I mean, on the first day we had a few persons who were kind of highlighted in the newspaper and so on. And they were very clear that they hadn't, found employment, but they were seeking employment. Under the previous dispensation, at the border, that may have been a requirement. And I'll say this, even though some of these parameters have been removed, it's very clear, even in this dispensation, that each signatory and each country has the right to protect its borders, right? So Nancy mentioned the element of crime and so on. So even if a person comes in and they don't have a job, lined up, but they're coming to seek employment, it doesn't necessarily take away Barbados' ability to do background checks, to ensure they've not been engaged in crime, and also to, as far as reasonably practicable, ascertain what this person's history and employment history has been like. So short answer, no, they don't need to, but it does not mean that it's kind of like a free-for-all.
As HRMAB watches this unfold, what are some of the HR issues that could raise their head?
And I think less issues and more so challenges that we need to anticipate and be proactive around. So with this, of course, we have removed the verifying entity, the Barbados Accreditation Council, from being able to verify these persons' certificates. And that's going to mean that internally, practitioners need to be able to do that verification on their own. You certainly, as you would not for any Barbadian, you certainly should not take a person's curriculum vitae or their resume to say that they have a certificate that they've placed on there. That verification should still happen. You've now removed BAC, of course, so that it means that load sits internally. You also, there may be a hurdle with respect to verifying criminal elements because you're not able to verify here whether the PCOC that applies here, which only accounts for convictions and not charges. Even if that's clear, what about ascertaining a PCOC, and when I say PCOC, a police certificate of character, from their country of origin? So those are the very low-hanging fruit that I can see presenting some hurdles.
What do employees looking for work throughout the region now, using these 4 countries as the example, what do they need to walk with to make the process as easy as possible?
Well, as Brittany indicated, definitely having your certificates. Coming with your valid police certificate of character would also help the process, ensuring you have the necessary reference checks, because now that is going to be a task assigned to the HR department more than likely in your organization, so it will help speed things along. Being able to also have an appreciation, I would say, as an employee coming in, of the cultural differences of the employment laws in the respective country that you're interested in, and as well as things like cost of living, being aware of the differences between countries. So while we're all CARICOM and we're all Caribbean, we all have sun, sea, and sand, there are differences within each of these countries. Indeed. So I think coming with that awareness, so outside of the certificates and all of those things, coming with that mindset that I am still moving to somewhere that is different from my home.
Yeah, and HR departments need to just keep their eye on the ball, really, as you said, those checks and balances to make sure that that person that you're hiring from another country coming in, to really represent your company is who they say they are and that they can deliver.
That's right, and I think, it's about helping people acclimate. So, of course, verifying that these persons have the ability to execute with their certificates and they have the technical capacity. But, as Nancy mentioned, it's not just about recognizing, yes, we all have similarities, but how does an HR department take the cultural element of this and ensure that people feel welcomed? Can they better acclimate to this environment? Is it going to take them longer? How are we recognizing and openly creating plans and strategies to ensure that as persons settle here, it's not, a huge stark reality for them. So lots of strategy, I think, should go into the planning, particularly for those organizations who are making large plans to do, whether it's job fairs or have large intakes of persons from other countries.
HRMAB keeping their eyes on HR in the region and really that freedom of movement that exists between St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Belize, Dominica, and Barbados. Of course, we'll keep in touch. Brittany, hopefully I see you before my tenure. My short little stickler in is here. Nice meeting you, Nancy, and looking forward to hearing more about how you see this freedom of movement working for our countries across the region and really for our economies, because that's what it's all about.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.